Well, hello there. Thank you for joining my channel today. This is the Facts on JW channel. This is KC, your host, and today is a beautiful day, as you can tell. And we are going to be talking with Collin today and interviewing him and finding out what woke him up, what kinds of things made him start questioning his beliefs, and eventually leading him to leaving and exiting Jehovah's Witnesses along with his kids. So let's listen to his story. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone. This is the Facts on JW channel. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Collin. He's going to tell us his story of how he became a witness and what led him to questioning his beliefs and eventually leading him out of the watchtower. So, Collin, please tell us your story.
Okay, well, hi Casey, and thanks for inviting me to come on. And yeah, I think my story is probably pretty similar to a lot of ex Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay, first of all, I was a born-in witness, and we don't go very far back as far as generations of witnesses. Just my parents. My parents were the first ones that converted back in the late 70s, which came from one of my mom's brothers, one of my uncles. He got the truth, okay, and then started talking to her about it. And a gal from our congregation in Minnesota. We're from Minnesota originally, Grand Rapids, Minnesota, so it's northern central Minnesota. And she started studying. They grew up Catholic, so of course Catholics, what do they do? Nothing basically, and everything looked great for them. Paradise and living forever, not getting old, blah blah blah. And it was kind of one of those things where I finally, after years and years and years and years, they're not in the organization anymore. Either my parents, they got divorced some years ago and then remarried, both of them, and I finally got it out of my dad that he never wanted to be a witness, but it was more because of when my mom started studying, they were living together, and she was like, we're in sin and this and that, and I'm going to leave you if you don't start. So basically, she blackmailed him. Like, if you don't start studying, I'm breaking up with you. And, they already had a baby, my oldest brother, and there's three of us, three brothers. And so he just kind of caved and started studying as well. And so then, the rest of us were born, and pretty much for our entire life, that's all we knew. Everything I knew growing up from day one, revolved around being a witness. My friends, my family, my entire social structure was the Kingdom Hall. And, it was, I think from day one, it was something that, as a child growing up, there was always, right off the bat, there was always a lot of anxiety involved with it. I always remember a lot of anxiety linked to school, specifically going to school, because of we were always singled out, as witnesses. They were always having to make exceptions for us. Every time there was a program, every time there was a birthday, every time there was a Thanksgiving thing, or they're making cards for Valentine's Day, and I think from that early age, I really felt scared. I felt scared. I felt anxious um, when those programs came around, because I mean, I was raised in the 80s and 90s, and especially back in the 80s in the schools I went to. You can imagine in northern Minnesota, people are pretty cut and dry, and just they my teachers did not even make an attempt at hiding the fact that they were disgusted with the fact that they had to like separate one student, right? Every single time there was a, a program like that. And a lot of times, like I had to remind them, and then it was like, oh, that's right. Okay, come here. And I vividly remember one of the things that I think has always marked me as far as in my memory and anxiety wise, because I've always had issues with depression and anxiety my whole life. And I always remember specifically particular classrooms. There was this one. We had the particularly when I was in like elementary, middle school. The elementary and middle school was this old building built like back in 1930 something, and it was those old school buildings with big columns, these big hallways, and you know, um, and they had bomb shelters in the basement, and there were like radiation signs, you know, all these old schools like that. And their building, it was called the West Building, and that building was more um, like industrial looking. Like you could see like the pipes in the ceiling, and it was really loud. All like the machinery was over there, and the boilers and all that stuff. And so when we would have like if there was a birthday thing or something, they would take me out of the classroom and bring me across the hall and put me in this other room all by myself and shut the door. So you're in this big room with all these pipes on the ceiling, and you can hear all this noise from the industrial machines and stuff, and you're just sitting there by yourself. I mean, a 6, 7 year old kid, 8 year old kid, and you're just sitting there, you know. And it was really terrifying for me. It was really scary, and I hated that. I hated school, always having to go to school every single year at the beginning of the school year and bring that stupid little brochure and give it to the teacher, to explain to them why I wasn't gonna stand up for the national anthem or do things like that. So school was at that point was really 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 just I hated it until I got to high school. Then by that time things had changed a lot, like in the 90s. Uh, and I actually enjoyed high school a lot. But yeah, we grew up in it. We were immersed in it. I mean, we were like just trying to be by the book, doing everything we had to do. We were going out in service. We were reaching out for privileges. We were, giving talks and trying to stay on the straight and narrow, like not getting in trouble. And, we never had girlfriends. None of that. We were pretty straight shooting kids growing up, and we had good parents. I mean, I can't say anything bad about my childhood. My parents were uh, very good parents. They instilled a lot of values in us, and we were typical latchkey kids. Like the Gen X. We spent most of the time just out on the streets, outside all day long. Until it was dark, and our mom would stand out on the porch and yell at us to come in, and that was pretty much it. When we came home from school, there was nobody ever there. We would come home and we learned how to cook ourselves, and because there was nobody there, we wanted to eat something, we had to make it. And so both my parents worked, and so yeah, that's growing up, that's about how that was. As far as we grew up with all the normal, like we didn't have any relationships really with anybody outside of the Kingdom Hall. We weren't allowed to hang out with any kids from school. We weren't allowed to go to prom. We weren't none of that. So pretty typical JW upbringing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, mine was similar.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing we had to look forward to that really we were excited about, and I did get excited about it, was our district convention. That was our vacation.
I actually didn't mind them either because I always looked for
Yeah.
drama, and those were entertaining. So, and I
Yep.
didn't feel as judged at the assembly because there were so many people. You're not
Yeah.
recognized as much as when you go to the Kingdom Hall, and it's a much smaller group of people, and the lights in there are so freaking bright and blinding.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Our district convention is in a city called Rochester, Minnesota. It's in southern Minnesota, and that's where the Mayo Clinic is, the renowned Mayo Clinic. And so there's a Mayo Civic Center, beautiful city. I love Rochester till this day. Beautiful city, very organized, very clean. Um, and we would have of course, the assemblies and conventions were always in like summer, so we were on vacation, and we get to go down there and I always remember those vivid memories where we'd be waiting for that meeting where they would announce like, oh, we've got the brother would say, we got the list of hotels here, and then as soon as that final prayer was over, everybody was hitting the door to get home. You were out of there to get home and start dialing, to see what hotel. We all like, well, get us in the Ramada or get us in and we because we always knew like which ones were the ones that were actually connected to the Civic Center, so you could like walk through the Skyway and then get to the Civic Center, and that was our vacation, and we always enjoyed it and had a fun time, and we got to splurge a little bit, and one thing that was really, really, really got stuck in my mind, just so vivid since I was little, was right next to the Civic Center downtown Rochester. There's this little plaza, and it's in between all the like skyscrapers. There's this little plaza, and there's a fountain right in the middle. And on one side there was a little Greek cafe called Max Cafe, and it was this old couple, this little old Greek couple, and we go there every morning for breakfast right before going to the convention site. And right across the plaza was this old dilapidated Rialto theater, and it looked like a castle on the outside. It had these big stained glass windows, and it was just beautiful. And they were kind of broken out, and there were pigeons flying in and out, and it had these like brass hand railings going up to it, and it was just so eerie and so cool. And we always talked about for years. I mean, we went to Rochester for decades for our conventions, and we always said, "Man, you know what? It would be something if they fixed that up and did something with it." And this one year, we came to our convention, and guess what? Barnes and Noble bookstore bought it. They remodeled the entire thing. They conserved all the structure of the theater and turned it into a bookstore. And I was just like, I was in heaven. I died and went to heaven. I love to read. And I was just like, you got it. And that connected, like when you went through this walkway to the Mayo Civic Center, it connected to the second floor of the Barnes and Noble bookstore. So you could stop in there, and there was a coffee shop on the second floor, and you could go in there. And every single time I'd go to the convention, I'd buy a book. And then after the conventions, I go there and sit and read and have coffee. And oh my goodness, I'll never forget that. There was good memories. I always tell people and ex-witnesses as well, we can't satanize everything. Not everything was bad. There were there were some good memories. Growing up, we had some good friendships. We had some good times. But of course, that was because that was during the time when I didn't know any better. I was completely indoctrinated. That was my entire life. There wasn't one single thing that started to wake me up. There was a whole number of things for years. And I think I could start with, since the time I was growing up, for example, the body of elders, the congregation, the CO visits. That's why my channel is called that. I could see hypocrisy. I could see disingenuousness in people when all of a sudden, like a couple of days before, for some reason, there was this frenzy at the Kingdom Hall, and the elders were just running around the Kingdom Hall and just shaking people's hands and hugging people and how you doing, and I haven't talked to you for a while, and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Ooh, this guy never talks to me. And then next week the CO is coming. And so they were kind of like getting ready, they were practicing, so that by the time the circuit overseer came, it looked natural, and I could just see that fakeness, and also a lot of nepotism, a lot of favoritism, when you'd see certain things, like there were a lot of incidences where the children of elders or other family members really got into some serious stuff, got in a lot of trouble. and it got swept under the rug and nothing happened to them. But if it were you or me, oh man, you were getting raked over the coals. Goodbye privileges.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. And so I always observed like that there was a lot of imperfection, and they always said something that always bothered me was, oh, well, you can't focus on that. It's a perfect organization made up of imperfect people. And I was like, yeah, but that's not an excuse though. I mean, that doesn't mean that, oh, well, I'm imperfect, so you have to put up with whatever. I can just do whatever I want. Because it's like, I'm imperfect too, but I don't do that. I don't do stuff like that, you know? And there has to be like accountability for your actions. And so I saw a lot of two-facedness. I saw a lot of hypocrisy and growing up very early, and I think a lot of people probably, you see that, but the thing is though, is that I always kept it inside because voicing anything against that was dangerous. That was a sign of spiritual weakness. That was a sign of rebelliousness. And that was Satan, driving a wedge in between your faith. And so it was just one of those things where, well, Jehovah will take care of it, let
Yeah.
Jehovah take care of it in due time. And so you're groomed and you're conditioned to overlook wrongdoing, and it's just amazing how that happens, how insidious it is.
Yes. So, at what age did you start questioning your beliefs? Like, I see that you had a problem with the behavior, which I think a
Yeah,
lot of us do notice this because as a Christian, Jehovah's Witnesses claim to be Christian. And one of the things that the Bible says is Jesus says, "You will know my people by their fruits,"
yeah,
to produce good fruits. And Jehovah's Witness organization as a whole produces rotten fruits in the sense of, for those, a perfect example of what you said, how
yeah,
are mistreating each other in that religion and or showing favoritism or being on the buddy buddy system there. So you definitely see that, but a little hypocrisy with that. But what were there any doctrinal things that you noticed that you had a problem with?
initially in the beginning, no, my waking up journey actually didn't it wasn't provoked by doctrinal things, just because I was so indoctrinated, by everything. Because I worked my way up. I became a regular pioneer. I became a ministerial servant, and then years later, when I came down to Honduras, I became an elder in the congregation that I was serving in. And so it wasn't doctrinal things, but it was, for me initially, it was the treatment. What I always, because I'm a sensitive person, I'm an emotional person, um, and I've always believed in treating people well, helping people. And when I saw how a lot of times, like poorer brothers or brothers or sisters that had mental problems, how they were kind of like marginalized, like, oh, well, that brother, just don't pay attention to him. Just don't. There was a lot of cold treatment towards people that had issues and problems because, the elders just didn't want to have to deal with it, and I saw that and that bothered me always. And then, it bothered me when one of the things that started to really get into my mind, that really was like a chink in my armor, was I observed a lot of people who were not witnesses that, in my mind, and I was having this internal conflict because I saw them, and maybe at that time, maybe the Holy Spirit was speaking to me. I don't know. I really don't know at that time. I can't say, but I was having a really, really big internal conflict because I saw other people reflecting Christ's attitude who were not witnesses. And there were people that helped me. There were people that, were doing other things in the community, and very faithful people and strong in their faith. And I started thinking, how is it possible that I see them doing everything that we never do? I never see witnesses doing stuff like that, right? The way they're helping other people, the way they're just so kind. They never judge me. They never judge me because I'm a witness. They never say, "Oh, I can't hang out with you because you're a witness." They never say, "I can't do this or that," or "You need to come to my church." No, they would never do that. And these people, many times, in times of need, helped me when the very people in my congregation did not. And so I started looking at that and going, "Wait a minute, this can't be the witnesses. We can't be the only true ones. It can't be. It just doesn't. Something's not adding up here because these people are doing what Jesus said, you know." And of course, that was a big internal conflict because we were taught that no, you had to be a witness. If you were going to be saved and you were going to survive Armageddon and all of that, you had to be a witness. So it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I was really hurt one time when, and I got a lot of stories, but for example, when I was in high school, and I've told this story before, but it's like the one that got away, that kind of story. I met this girl when I was in I was a senior in high school, and this girl got transferred to our school. She was a new student, and we had a talent show at the school. And so I was participating in the talent show. I'm a musician. I play guitar and I sing and stuff like that. And so I did a Led Zeppelin song, and I was up on stage, and I'm doing the song, and as I'm going through the song and playing it, I lock eyes with this girl right in the front row, and I was just like, oh my God. I mean, instant love at first sight. I was like, who is that? You know, who is that? I mean, she was absolutely the dream. She had this rocker, short, blonde haired, like spiky haircut, dark eyeshadow, blue eyes, bracelets on with the spikes on it and all. I was just like, oh my God, this girl fell out of heaven. And we just, as soon as I got off the stage, I went down and I sat right next to her, and we just hit it off right there. We just started talking. She's like, "Oh man, that song was awesome. You did really good." And then we would like we would sneak out of class and then go up to our high school was really big. And like on the third floor, there was the library, and we would sneak out of class and we'd go up to the library and we'd hide behind the bookshelves, and we would sit back there and talk with each other, and we kissed a couple times and everything. And I was just so in love with this girl. I mean, she was just everything. And me, being the idiot that I am, I don't know what I was thinking. I told my parents, like I was all excited, Oh man, I met this girl, and right away, what? You did? Wait a minute. No, Dave, my dad, Dave, come here. We got to. What's going on? No, you got to break this off. You break it off right now. She's not a witness. Oh man. And I was just like, why? I was like, why? And I was just like crying. I'm like, why are you making me do this? Why? She's a good person. Why can't I? She's not a witness, and then this and that, and And I had to go to school this next day, and we sat down, and I told her, like, I can't talk to you anymore, and because I'm a witness and all that. And she started crying, and she's like, you're gonna give me up? You're gonna lose me because of some stupid religion? And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And she just got up and walked away. I never saw her again. That was the last time I ever saw her again. I don't know if she left or if and that's one of those things till this day. And forgive me, my wife and everything, but I still have that in my mind. Like, what happened to her? Where is she?
Just try to find her on Facebook.
Yeah, never been able to. I wouldn't know what she looks like now anyway. I mean, after this
You knew her
long,
name. You knew her name.
her,
Or she got
her
married.
name, her name was Heidi Huber.
But I mean, like you knew her name. Maybe you could find.
Yeah, and I went online, and there's like a billion search things came up with their name on Facebook, and nowadays who knows what she looks like? I mean, I could be looking right at her and not know if it
Yeah.
was her or not. You never know. I mean, but anyway, stuff like that, like it was just like, why do we have to like lose these relationships? Why do we have to avoid people? Why do and that really, really, really hurt me, and stuff like that. Just having to give up relationships, having to give up our talents. Oh, no, no, you can't do that. No, you can't play in that play. No, you can't go to that concert. No, you can't, you know, put the things of the kingdom first. Oh, you'll get to do that in the paradise, and all this stuff. And well, here we are, how many years later? I'm 43 now. And well, no paradise. Here we are, and you give up all this stuff and you go, I should have taken advantage of it while I could have at the time. But, hindsight's 2020. But
Yeah, and I think we all have similar stories of something that we feel like we missed out on. I mean, a lot of us don't go to college, and as well
yep.
as we don't get to marry the person we wanted to. Stuff like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's happened.
And that's the other thing is a lot of the marital problems because, you're so desperate to get married. Like you want to get married because that's the only chance you're going to have of, having sex with anybody. And your only options are to marry a witness, you know, and everything. And that leads to a lot of problems and, hence being divorced years later and
Yes.
everything. And when I came down to Honduras too, that was another big, chink in my armor as well, because there are definitely classes, there are levels of brothers and sisters in the organization. First, second, third, fourth tier, how people are treated, what kind of buildings and I saw this totally different treatment down here of the brothers. And it's like, wait a minute, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to put up with this? Down here, because the thought process was, I can just imagine the thought process being of a bunch of white guys, a bunch of old white guys, good old boys up in New York. Well, those people down there, they're used to it. They're poor. Just let them, they don't need a nice building. They'll be happy with just four walls, right? They'll be happy to have anything. And it's like, yeah, well, I'd like to see some Americans come down here and be in a kingdom hall like this, sitting on wooden benches, no air conditioning. Yeah, right. Good luck with that. You know, they would never allow that, and it just bothered me how, there was everything down here was done differently. Nobody followed the rules. Everyone just did what they wanted, you know.
They shun people? Do they shun people down there?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
Really?
yeah. That's alive and well. That works really well. Some people do, some people don't. I think just like anywhere, but yeah, they do for the most part. Just bothered me, being in seeing that difference of treatment and also like making these poor brothers slave away and donate. It's like these people are dirt poor. 70% of the population here lives in abject poverty, and yet they want them to donate for everything and give their time to build the kingdom halls and do this and do that. It's like these poor people are just trying to survive. They're just trying to literally survive day by day. And it just seems so unfair to me. And being in an organization with so much money, it's like, can't you cut these people a break here? And just things bothered me. What really shocked me too was when I was elder here, that's the first time I got access to the Shepherd the Flock of God book.
Okay.
I'd never read that before. I didn't even know it existed. I had no idea.
Oh.
And then I got that and I started reading it and I'm like, WTF? Like, are you serious? Because I always thought a lot of times, all my life growing up, a lot of the stuff that I heard from like brothers and elders and I thought it was just kind of like unwritten rules, right? Like this is just kind of the way we do things and I'm like, this is actually in writing. What the but I'm like, I can't even believe. No wonder. This is actually in writing in a manual. And when I started reading that, I'm just like, oh my God, no wonder. No wonder we do this stuff. It tells them right there, you
Was there
know.
anything in particular in the Shepherding the Flock book that you feel like wasn't true? Right, like when you
All
started
of it.
reading,
All of it.
like,
Yeah. Just what I couldn't believe is like, okay, one thing that bothered me was the majority of the Shepherd the Flock of God book is all dedicated to judicial committees.
yeah,
That's the most about sins. disfellowshipping offenses, and judicial committees. That's what they focus everything on. And what really floored me was how when it talked about like naming brothers, when it talked about initiating like judicial committees, and then it said, okay, first and then second, and the praying to God was secondary. It wasn't the first thing. It was like you get together and then you discuss the things and you do this and you do that. And then it was like point number 3 was like, then you pray. And I'm like, what? I'm like, wait a minute. It's like, you should be doing that first. That should be the first thing, is praying to get God's guidance, because you're about to fuck somebody's life up. Okay. You're going to ruin somebody's life here. Okay. And like praying to God was like the third point, right? Okay. Then pray about it, right? About God's direction and stuff. And it's just like, man, I couldn't believe, like, I'm reading through there, like, people with depression, people with suicide. One of the ones that really floored me was, and I've made videos about this too, was baptizing people with communicable diseases. That is such bullshit. Number one, because there's a part in there about the procedures for baptizing somebody if they have HIV or if they have things like that. There's a part about that. There's absolutely nothing scientific about it. The information is totally wrong, because they say, and they make it sound like, oh, it's a loving arrangement that the person who has a communicable disease comes in out of loving concern for their brothers, comes and talks to the body of elders, and they can arrange for the baptism to be done in private, like in a hotel room, or in a bathtub of a hotel room. This is what it says: a bathtub of a hotel room. And I'm going, okay, wait a minute. Okay, so you're worried about baptizing a brother that has AIDS. Okay, you're worried about getting infected by AIDS because you might come in contact with something, right? And yet you're willing to baptize them in a bathtub in a hotel room where there's no hygienic, anything there. If you're in a swimming pool with chlorine, okay, anything that gets in there, the virus will die in like 5 seconds. You have no problem. And yet you're willing to go do it in a hotel room in private. And it dawned on me, okay, I understand what's going on here. The whole thing is, they do not want to baptize people with AIDS in public. That's what the whole thing is. Has nothing to do with catching the virus. They know they can't catch the virus that way.
Why do they not want to baptize this person in public then?
Right. Well, it's because how what's the whole viewpoint of the organization about homosexuality, their whole viewpoint about HIV and all that kind of stuff. It's a sin. It's, and they don't want, if people know, for example, if there's public knowledge that brother so-and-so is a brother that has AIDS, they don't want him getting baptized in public with everybody else. Right? Because it's looked down on. It's looked down upon, right? So to save face and to not be embarrassed, they'd rather go do it behind closed doors. And just nobody will know about it. Because if you look at that, why would you, if you're so worried about catching AIDS, okay, why would you baptize somebody in a bathtub?
Yeah.
That's going to put you at risk, not in a swimming pool. Okay. And also, anybody knows it. I've taught health class at school. Okay. I know all about these topics and everything. Okay. You're not going to get AIDS by touching a person. It doesn't get transmitted through saliva. It's not transmitted through anything else, through sneezing, coughing. It's either sexual contact or it's through blood. That's it. And even if you're in a swimming pool, like at a convention where there's chlorine, even if that person had an open sore or if they were bleeding, the chlorine will kill the virus immediately. Immediately. So it's not about that. That's not what they're worried about. They don't want to baptize publicly somebody who might have gotten AIDS because they were gay or because they did drugs. They're discriminating. That's what it is.
They care about, always talking about their reputation, not bringing
right
on Jehovah's name.
Exactly.
But what they do is they they actually make themselves look worse because they're
Right,
stuck on this. Don't bring reproach on Jehovah's name, no matter what, no matter what. So
right,
like the whole CSA problems that they have, they're stuck on this. Don't bring reproach on Jehovah's name. So let's brush it under the rug, pretend it never happened because it's an embarrassment, but
right,
then address the actual problem, which would fix their reputation. I think they're a
right.
bunch of idiots running this whole organization
Oh,
anyway.
it is completely. And they're not only idiots, but they know exactly what they're doing. And one of the things that also really floored me was if you read in the Shepherd the Flock of God, well, you can download it. It's online. Um, all the parts about any of the disfellowshipping offenses, and particularly the CSA, okay, the child sexual abuse. The number one thing is when they're dealing with a case like that, number one is who else knows about it? That's number one. That's number one. It's not getting help for the person. It's not reporting it to the authorities. It's who knows about it. Who knows about it sets the tone for the entire way that they're going to handle that case. Because there's even a part in the manual where it talks about, like, for example, if they're going to name a brother who's maybe they're going to name him an elder or something or a ministerial servant, and this brother might have committed a disfellowshipping offense years in the past, and it talks about that. So what does it say? It says, well, you get together with the brother and you talk about it and you say, okay, the main thing is how long ago did it happen? That's the main thing. Did it happen years ago? Did any people really know about it? Did it get outside of the congregation? Does he feel bad about it? Okay, it's not a big deal, right? So this could have been a guy that made a child 20 years ago, but you know what? That was 20 years ago. And a lot of time has passed and nobody really knew about it. So, we'll keep an eye on him. And I'm just going, oh my God, this is in writing.
I have read that actually. Yeah, I've gotten copies of the Shepherding the Flock book, and I do remember it saying something about like if they're trying to appoint someone a ministerial servant or elder, and they find out he had done something in the past that
Yeah,
fellowshipping offense. Okay, that's fine. But what if it was a woman? What if it
yeah,
would they have done the same? Oh, it's okay. Been
of
several.
course not. Of course not. So yeah, so it's just the internal procedures are CYA. It's cover your ass, cover your ass, cover your ass about everything. It's who knows about it, who else knows about this, and that's the whole thing. It's protecting the brand. The brand is Jehovah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's above all else, protect the brand. Okay. And sweep it under the rug if you can. And so it just, stuff like that really started to bother me. But when I finally ended up leaving, okay, so the last time I went to a Kingdom Hall, I was actually for a couple of years we went back to the States because my first wife had health problems, and then we got there and kind of got sidetracked because she got pregnant with my second daughter. So that all kind of got put on hold. And then once she was born, my second daughter was born, 3 months later, they found out she had breast cancer. And so we were going through that. We were back in Minnesota just for a couple of years, like 2 years. And so we were in this congregation. It was a Spanish congregation. And, the brothers were all American, but and they assigned this brother to us to kind of keep an eye on us. And I was going through a really hard time. I was going through a terrible time because that whole situation ruined me economically, ruined me in every sense. I lost my job. I had two young girls. My wife couldn't do anything. She had, a radical mastectomy, I had to help her with everything. I had to take care of the kids. So I ended up losing my job because I was missing work all the time. And so we were having a lot of money problems, a lot of money problems. And there was this particular time, and I've talked about this in a video, that I don't think I'll ever get over it. I've tried to get over it. I've tried to pray about it. I've tried to forgive this person. I've hurt me so much. where it was one time when we went to a like Thursday night meetings, like the ministry school and that meeting. And we came out in the parking lot and the brother came out and we were talking and I needed gas money. I needed gas money. And I asked him if he could spare like $20 or something for gas. And he just looked at me and he looked down at the ground and he was shaking his head and he said, and in this tone, like just like irritated, when is this gonna stop? It was the first time in my life I couldn't even process what I just heard. This is coming from an elder. This is coming from someone who's supposed to be helping us, shepherding us. You know, we're the one sheep from the 99. And at first it didn't register what he just said. I just stood there like looking at him and I was just like, brother, I said, you know what? I said, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I said, this does have to stop and it's going to stop tonight. And I got in my car. We left. I never went back to that congregation. And I never went back to a Kingdom Hall after that. That was around 2010.
And that was
Right around there.
in
Yeah,
Minnesota.
I was a witness to everything, and we were in that congregation. I just left. We never said anything to them. We never told anybody. We just left. And we ended up coming back to Honduras. We came back to Honduras. We sold everything that we had. We came back to Honduras. And then once we were back there, we went back to the city that we lived in before when we lived here with my two little girls. And I never went back to the Kingdom Hall there and was just kind of like basically inactive. I mean, we were still like part of the congregation, but I was just like inactive. I didn't go preaching or anything. And my wife sometimes would take the girls. She would take the girls to the Kingdom Hall and stuff, and I wouldn't go. And then fast forward 2014 is when we got divorced. We got divorced, and we went our separate ways. And the girls stayed with her. She had the custody of our daughters. And it wasn't until right at that time when I got a job in a construction project, and I had to move to this other city for this construction project, big construction project. It was a wind farm. And that was the first time in 2014 that I was given a smartphone, a touch phone. That was the first time I had a smartphone with WhatsApp and all that stuff on it and YouTube. And that's when I was introduced to YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And it was probably about 2 years after that. It was about 2016 was the first time I stumbled across JT and Lady C's channel and Lloyd Evans. Okay. And when I started watching those two, it was addiction. It was binge, night and day. That's when I started getting into the doctrinal stuff that I didn't know about. I had no idea. I had no idea. And I was absolutely, I guess from that point on, my life went into just a tailspin of just destruction.
Yeah.
Just self-destruction, realizing all of a sudden when I saw the stuff about the UN, when I saw the stuff about the sexual abuse that was going on, all that stuff, the things with the governing body, and all of that. And realizing for the first time in my life, my entire existence had been a complete lie. It was awful. Psychologically, it destroyed me. Yeah. Emotionally, it destroyed me.
Yeah, I compare it to a grieving process.
Yeah.
So when you are fully brainwashed into something like that, you have an emotional attachment to it. And when you realize that you've been lied to, that's hard to accept. Yeah. And it is a process. And I would say probably 2 years is a good amount of time for a person to be mostly fully recovered. Just like grief.
Yeah.
You lose someone close to you, it takes about 2 years to get back to normal life.
It took me about 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it took me quite a while. I started in 2018. I had a channel that grew pretty fast, but it was in Spanish. It was all in Spanish. And I started with that, with the XJW stuff. And then that was the first time, though, that I had ever actually talked about my experiences, and I wasn't prepared for the emotions that were going to come out from that. And I got really depressed. I got really burned out. And I stopped that channel. I erased it. And then in it wasn't until about 2019 I came back, and then I started the CO visit in English.
Okay.
And I also did that for a while, got burned out again, erased everything. And I told everybody I made a video. I said I had like 300 videos. And I told everybody, you know what? I think I've said everything I need to say. I don't really know what else to talk about. This is affecting me too much. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I don't want this in my life. I'm done with it. Erased everything. And at that time, I still had like over 2,000 subscribers, and everyone was like, "Where are you going?" And testament to my, I mean, the small following that I have, but they are extremely loyal, because I was gone for quite a while and none of them unsubscribed. They were still there. And then what got me back in, what wrote me back in, was when my 16-year-old daughter sent me a message and said, "Dad, I can't do this anymore. I want out. I want to disassociate myself." And then that was like, boom, whirlwind. Then I was like, I had to come back.
So what woke her?
That same kind of stuff. Just my daughter, my 16-year-old daughter, whose name is Cosette. Um, she's a free spirit. She's an artist. She can paint. She can draw just amazingly. She can sing. She has a wonderful singing voice, and she can't be held back. She can't give up those things that she has, and she didn't want to give those things up, and she was constantly getting criticized, and and she has a lot of me in her. She's kind of rebellious, and you know, she likes dressing like a goth and doing all that kind of stuff and listening to metal and rock, and I love it. I love it. And I was like, okay. I said, well, we sat down, and she came here to visit, and I said, listen, I said, you have to make the decision. But I said, you have to weigh, first of all, when you make this decision, if you disassociate yourself, you already know what's going to happen. Okay. The family that you've grown up with, the family that raised you, basically, from one day to the next, they are going to completely change. Okay. They're going to stop talking to you. They're going to treat you, they're going to shun you. And you have to be prepared for that. It's going to hurt. It's going to, okay. And she's like, okay, yep, I know, but I can't do this anymore. And so she disassociated herself. The way that she did it was she wrote a letter to the congregation. And what I told her was, okay, this is a legalistic organization. Okay. So you have to fight fire with fire. You have to fight legalities with legalities. So the letter that she wrote was, she cited legal precedents from the international human rights and said, leave me alone. If you don't do this, if you don't do that, I'll take legal action. And that was it. They didn't say one word. That was in November of last year. In December, she tried to commit
Oh,
because of how she was getting treated. She
but
wasn't prepared for it.
shouldn't be talking to her. Were they?
Yeah, and I didn't know. I didn't know, Casey. I found out 3 months later.
Oh,
I had no idea this happened. But
yeah.
she took a bunch of pills,
Oh,
and then we got in this legal battle, and it was messy. It was really bad.
are they mistreating her or they're just shunning her?
They're just shunning her.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just shunning
Are
her.
there?
Thankfully, right now she's doing pretty well, but the idea is that she's on her last year of high school right now. She's going to graduate here pretty soon. And once she graduates, she's going to move out on her own. And then once she does that, she'll be independent from her mother. And then I can help her directly. I don't have to send money to her mom anymore. And that's basically the plan because she wants to go to college.
What about her mother? Is she a witness still?
She's yes, but she's inactive, but she's still,
She
you
believes in
know,
it?
she's palmy. She's palmy,
Oh,
physically out, mentally in.
Well, maybe your daughter can talk to her and explain some things to her. Does she know about the doctrines, your daughter, about the
Yes.
19
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. Well, maybe
Yeah.
she,
But you know how people are though. You try to tell them that and
yeah,
they
that
just they just shut down. They don't want to listen to it, you know.
makes them
But
scared.
I told her, I honestly told her, don't waste your time with that. I said, you focus on your plans, focus on getting done with high school, focus on getting to college, and move out. I said, move out. You have to, you know, get yourself independent so you can get away from
Yes.
that situation and that influence. So that's been, you know, emotionally that's been really hard for me. It's been really tough.
Is her mother shunning her?
Yes, on and off. I mean, you know, they live together right now, so
Yeah.
they've got to have some contact, but minimal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you started learning about the doctrinal problems once you started getting on YouTube with 1914, and
Yeah.
so
Yep.
that's all of that with the JT and Lady C's channel and Lloyd Evans. Yeah, they have some good information on the doctrines and the
Yep.
Babylon and all that. So once you
Yeah.
gathered this information, you just said, "Okay, I'm done."
Well, I knew particularly the one that really really blew me away was of course when I was a young brother during the 90s particularly there was a lot of expectation and there was a lot of tension in the air about the tribulation in the end because there were so few people left from 1914.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was like, it's here. It's any day now because every time we looked at the yearbook, it was less and less and less and less. And we knew that when the tribulation started, there were still going to be some remnant of the generation on earth, right? Before they got raptured or whatever. And so it was going to happen any moment. Well, they all died. They all died and nothing happened. But what happened? They just snuck in there without saying anything, that overlapping generation. And then I was just like, oh my God, how did I not see that while I was a witness, right? It's like all of them died, the generation that will by no means pass away. And then they did, and nothing happened. One more failed prophecy, you know. And when I read that, and then about the Revelation book, and then us being part of the UN and all of that, what that entailed, not just being a part of the UN, the contract that they signed said that they had to be in agreement with the UN's purpose and
Yeah.
contribute to it, right?
They have to
That
pledge
just blew me up.
allegiance to the UN. They have to pledge allegiance
Yeah.
to do it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Right. And here I am. My mind goes back to the little kid sitting in that room all by himself because I couldn't sing the Pledge of Allegiance or do a birthday card. And I'm going, oh my God, this is sick. This is evil. What they did to us,
It is. And now
you know?
your current wife was she ever a witness?
No, no.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your story. And I'm glad that you were able to start putting everything together. I do think a lot of people who are in it really don't like the way they get treated, even if they believe in it. There's just this whole sense of there's drama. It's all drama all the time, or
Yeah,
major anxiety. There's not a single witness out there who doesn't suffer from anxiety, including
absolutely.
myself, who I'm okay now, but I did suffer quite a bit with it. And then there's also the unaliving oneself is a problem, or thoughts of that.
Yes, yes.
So definitely there's all of that's problem. This is why it's considered a high control religious group, because they don't give you the freedom to make your own decisions and use your own critical thinking skills, like JT says, you critical thinking skills, and that you live in the
Yes,
fear, obligation, guilt. So I'm glad you were able to wake up, and your daughters as well.
yes, yes. Thank you, and thank God, that we were able to come to that conclusion, and also, and I'm still in the process. I'm still a work in process. I'm trying to
Yeah.
rediscover my faith and rediscover what God is in Jesus and all of that. And it's hard. It's hard after all of that, being indoctrinated since you're born, all of that programming. Um, it's a really tough thing, but it's just a day by day thing. You take it one day at a time.
Yep, that's all you can do. Well, thanks so much. I'll make sure and put in the description below the name of your channel, the CO visit.
CEO visit. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you having me on. I really enjoyed it.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Colin, for sharing your story. If anyone wants to go on his channel, you can go to the CO visit on YouTube and check out his channel. I will leave that in the description below as well. Thank you so much for joining today. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And if you would like to be interviewed, please let me know in the comments below, or you can also email me at factsonjw@gmail.com. Stay tuned for more, and we will see you again soon.